I'm delighted to welcome you all tonight to the Consulate General of France in New York, which is obviously the home of France and the home of all the friends of France, as the second Climate International Summit is coming to an end. All of you, are part of the new generation that will be taking up the main challenge of our future, and I mean every word of it, the main challenge of our future: global warming, environmental issues more broadly. And this is why I'm particularly thrilled to host this event tonight here at the Consulate. As you all know, the French authorities, the French government is deeply involved in all environmental issues. It has been involved for a number of years, but I would say it may be even more involved currently in the context of the upcoming 2015 United Nations Climate Change Conference that will take place in Paris at the end of next year, and which is called Paris Climat 2015. That very conference will mark the 21st yearly session of the Conference of the Parties, and will again demonstrate our country's determination against global warming. I would like to draw your attention to what President François Hollande said in his speech 2 days ago to the French ambassadors, all French ambassadors from around the world who are currently gathered in Paris. President Hollande very strongly committed our country to the success of this conference, and it is our roadmap to all of us French diplomats around the world to make environmental issues the #1 issue in the coming months, so that we can reach an ambitious result at the 2015 conference in Paris. It's not only a matter of diplomatic success for France. We do it because we believe in it. It's major for our generation, but maybe even more for your generation. And so rest assured that France will be committed all the way to that conference, and of course even beyond. You know also that in the coming weeks we will be having here in New York the UN General Assembly, as every year at the same period of the year. President François Hollande will be traveling to New York for that occasion, and he will take part in the high-level meetings and summits that the UN Secretary General is organizing on that occasion. Along with President Hollande, Minister Laurent Fabius will be also in New York, and part of his agenda will be also dedicated to environmental issues. And also Mrs. Ségolène Royal, who is the Minister for Environmental Issues in France, will be traveling on that occasion, which again is yet another symbol of France's commitment on these issues. And in this context, as France's representative here in New York, I am very pleased and I'm honored to be supporting your initiative. When Margot came to see me a few months ago to tell me about what the Climate Initiative is about, I was immediately enthusiastic about it, and I was enthusiastic also to host the closing event of the summit. So thank you for choosing the Consulate. I think it means a lot to us that you did so. And for us it's important because your initiative, which aims to raise awareness of these issues among students all around the world, is paramount. As evidenced by the international dimension of the conference, the solution to environmental issues can only be found collectively. I was speaking about next year's conference. Next year's conference will bring together representatives of approximately 100 countries. Again, we want to reach in Paris a binding agreement by which all contracting parties will commit to elimination of greenhouse gases, or in order to keep temperature increase below 12 degrees by 20 100. But of course, reaching a global agreement will not be an easy task. We know that in the past there were other conferences that did not produce the results that were awaited or that we were all hoping for. France and Europe have been at the forefront of these issues, but in spite of that, we know that it's a challenge. It's difficult, and so we will need the forces of everyone around the world, younger generation, and again that's why UN initiative is important. Governments, of course, but NGOs, big cities. A few months ago, this very issue was one of the key topics that the mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo, decided to discuss with her counterpart here in New York, Bill de Blasio. If you allow me to say just a few more words, I would like also to draw your attention to the series of photographs by Caroline Monastra, which are called the Witness Tree, and these photographs that are on display here, which beyond their obvious aesthetic values, bear also witness to current climate changes. These beautiful photographs illustrate the transformations that are going on under our very eyes and should move us to take further action. With these words, I would like again to congratulate all of you for your strong commitment and reiterate that France will be doing its part and certainly more than its part on these issues in the coming months and beyond. Thank you to all of you. I will now leave the floor to the panel, and I will be joining you for drinks right afterwards. Thank you so much.
Monsieur Lortelari and the French Consulate for hosting us tonight, but also for helping us promote the event over the past few months. Thank you all for being here tonight for the closing ceremony of the Second Climates International Summit. It is highly symbolic for us to be here at the French Consulate because Climates is based and was funded in 2011 in France. But there's also a lot of French citizens here and Francophiles, so it's very symbolic for us to be here. Before getting into further details about what these young people have achieved this week, I wanted to thank the people who have enabled this summit to be happening, but also a major success. So first, let me thank you, our sponsors, the Master Climate Society of Columbia University, Alliance, and NRDC. And in particular, I would like to thank Cynthia Thompson, who has provided tremendous support for enabling us to connect the summit to the Grand Institution of Columbia University, but also for her never-failing logistical help throughout the week. It also has been a great honor and a great pleasure to collaborate with Alessia Lefebvre of Alliance, who has promoted a lot the summit. And it matters tremendously to us to connect with universities because we believe that in order to enable a shift of social paradigm, we really need to connect to academic programs and student partnerships and associations. So I'd like to thank Alliance for their support. It has also been a great honor for us to be sponsored by one of the leading environmental advocacy association, the Natural Resources Defense Council. And in particular, I'd like to thank Robert Friedman, who's not with us tonight, but who has really pushed for a collaboration. Of course, this summit could not have happened without the help of the people who have organized it. And I'm talking about volunteers who have worked outside of their job hours during weekends and nights, but also students who were working, in addition to everything. So I would like to thank my team that was based in New York, Aggie, Nadav, Amy, Peter, who's downstairs, and Sabine. Thank you so much for making this event happen. But there were also 20 people who were working tirelessly from Paris on all the different aspects of the summit. And in particular, I'd like to thank Aurore Bimon and Norma Julien, the President and Vice President of Climates. You guys make me extremely confident about the future of Climates by your involvement in this association in the work. There were also many other people. I'm going to say a few names now because they really deserve a lot of credit. Suzy, Aglaé, Delphine, Cécile, Guillaume, Eleonora, Juliette, Antoine, Alexandre, Jérémy, Vivian, Leslie, and others. Thank you guys for being involved in these volunteer associations. There were also friends who participated a lot in this summit, and in particular Hugo, our filmmaker, Nadir, Thibaut, who made the promotional video of this summit, Sophia, Jay, and Yvonne. Thank you all for making this event happen. So for 5 days, we had people coming from all around the world in New York City. We had people from Malaysia, Peru, Colombia, Ecuador, Switzerland, Germany, I'm missing some countries, and of course the US and France. And the summit was an extremely rich event where we had panels on entrepreneurship at the Center for Social Innovation, but also field visits where we had a practical grasp of sustainability practice, but also climate impact on the city of New York. There were also thematic and skill-building sessions with experts, professionals, and faculty from Columbia University. And I would like to take this time to thank all of our speakers, some of them are with us tonight, for accepting to join us for this original and interactive format where the participants were really at the center of the sessions and where we engaged in a lot of, in my opinion, extremely productive discussions. One of the highlights for me of this event was a simulation of negotiations in the context of a heat wave in 2044. Essentially what happened is we had people playing the roles of the head of a retirement home or of a water management or AC business or government officials, and they all gathered around the table and they were negotiating about budget allocation. And this event was very fun because it's a simulation, but simulations are also an excellent way to raise awareness about specific challenges related to climate, in addition to putting yourself in the shoes of people you will be lobbying with as activists or just working with in your future life as professionals or in your current career. So that was, for me, one of the most interesting and challenging exercise of this event. So I actually wrote this speech this morning when I was at the back of the room where we spent most of our week. And while I was looking at everybody, wrapping up the week and thinking about the next steps after this event, I was thinking, how did these guys do it? Like for 5 days, they've been working from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and sometimes even later. They were learning and sharing knowledge. They were thinking and solving problems. They were listening, debating, and even arguing. And at some point, they even sang and performed theater. It was an extremely rich event, and yet this last day, everybody still had this amazing energy about thinking, what are the next steps after this event? And while I was looking at them and was becoming very emotional, that's where I got really caught up by the philosophy of this summit, and that's when I really, got inspired. I was inspired by some of the stories I heard this week. The story of, for example, Santiago, who told me that he wanted to become the president of Costa Rica and bring environmental issues in public policy in his country. Or, for example, Laura, who works in environmental regulations and supply chains in Colombia, and who said, I want to make more impact in the private sector in my country. And Another example is in front of me this morning while I was writing those notes. Several groups spoke during a pitch contest. The idea was, think about your next project and pitch it in front of everyone. And in like maybe an hour, we had a group that launched the Climate Media Challenge, which is essentially using pop culture stars and high-tech technologies and social media to bring big media's attention to climate issues in like an hour. Another example is yesterday night over drinks. I heard Jay and Alexandra thinking about how they could start this online platform to take an inventory of how of the broken water pipelines in the different cities around the world, in broken water pipelines or broken heat systems, so that you can keep track. And the idea is that engaging communities can then, fix those broken environmental facilities, but also drag the authorities' attention. And that was really an amazing inspiration for me to see all of this great energy. Those are just a few anecdotes of this week, and I really encourage you to go and meet these people and hear about all their ideas and ambitions. To conclude, this summit aimed to educate, inspire, and empower future climate leaders and change makers. And I am extremely proud to have met those people and to have worked with them. And thank you very much for coming tonight. And again, feel free to talk to this extremely diverse and ambitious group of people. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Lorta-Lori, for hosting this event tonight. I really appreciate it, and I think everyone really appreciates it. Thank you, Margot, for having organized this amazing second international summit in New York City. We couldn't have done it without you, without your commitment, and we could not be here tonight without you, because I'd like to recall that Margot is the co-founder of Climate. So when Henri and Margot co-founded Climate in 2011, there were no more than 5 people in the association. They dreamt of building an international network of students who would find and advocate innovative solutions to climate change. This dream is becoming reality, I think. In less than 3 years, we've built an international think and do tank, presenting more than 40 countries and inspiring hundreds of young people to become change makers. But we've not only built an international network, we've designed a unique and innovative research method based on interdisciplinarity and international cooperation. After having released our call for action in 2012, after our first international summit, we launched a dozen of collaborative research projects. Most of them are now heading to their conclusive phase, and most research teams have collaborated with well-known organizations and institutes such as World Watch Institute, Green Cross, the Global Risk Forum in Davos, or MIT Climate Collab. I'm very proud of you. So I would like to say congratulations to all our project coordinators and members. Adrien, Laura, Daniela, Deepak, Alexandra, Stephanie, Noela, Tatiana, Eleonora, and all those that are not here tonight. And of course, thank you, Marie, our amazing research director. But Climate is not only a think tank, it's a think and do tank. Why? Because all our research projects are meant to be converted into action, be it through mobilization or training. And all those projects are meant to drive change in the world. One of our most successful action projects is Copy My City. Copy My City has 3 steps, and in 3 steps, transform young people into change makers. After having been trained about climate and energy issues, the participants of COP in my city put themselves in the shoes of climate negotiators and tried to reach a global agreement to keep the global warming below 2 degrees Celsius. And that triggers a momentum that leads them to take concrete climate action in their communities. In 2013, when we launched the project, we were present in 19 cities, like Paris, Mexico, or Hyderabad. In 2014, this year, the goal is to reach more than 100 cities and 10,000 people all over the world. And in 2015, just before and during COP21, we want to go viral to expand climate action, climate youth action all over the world. That's the whole point of climate, connecting global to local, global to local, local to global. Empowering and inspiring next generation of decision makers. Inspiration, collaboration, and creativity are at the heart of any social movement. And they are also at the heart of our two programs that include research, training, and action projects. Global climate politics that aims at fostering international cooperation, and climate change challenge accepted that aims at envisioning a positive but realistic world in 2050 under climate constraints. Indeed, there's no movement if there's nowhere to go. But I actually think that climate people know where to go pretty well. Last year, in Bogota, after our first regional workshop, we contributed to the creation of a youth movement in Latin America called CLIC. And I think they know pretty well where they are going to go. They are going to organize the COI 10 in Lima in December. So I'd like to wish you courage and good luck. And here we are now. After 5 days of peer-to-peer learning and participative workshops, idea labs, field visits, you, the participants of our second international summit, know where to go. This morning, you came up with 7 amazing projects about food security, integration of long-term in policy institutions, urban ecosystem resiliency, roots, like a project about roots of involvement and youth voice integration in decision-making policies. I was quite amazed and quite proud of you. So, yeah, I'm really amazed to see how multi-talented and creative you are in climate. And I'm sure you have some friends that are as creative as you, so I encourage you to recruit them and to make them come in climate. I can't help think that creativity is a part of the solution of climate change. And I think the youth is maybe the youth is creative enough to trigger change in the world. We've seen that many times in the past years, like in Arabic countries, in European countries, in many places. So I trust you to bring some change in the world to fight climate change. Climate is growing and growing, and I'm happy to see that climate can contribute to expand youth-driven climate action and international cooperation in the world. I'm very proud to be president of this amazing organization. I'm very proud to have met you all and to see that you are all going to lead projects and groups of mobilization and research in your countries. Thanks to the New York team, thank you, the Paris-based team, thank you again for this amazing event, and I'd like to tell you once more how grateful we are for being here tonight and for having held this summit in New York City. Thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you to our host at the French Consulate. What a beautiful consulate. It's like a museum. I want to spend some time afterwards looking at the paintings. And thanks to the Youth Summit. I wish I could have attended some of the events this week, because it sounds pretty amazing. And Margot, it's good to see you. Margot is one of my excellent students at Columbia, an energy policy class I teach, so it's great to see you leading the charge on this. So I'm impressed that we got this group from all around the world. You're going to be the future entrepreneurs, innovators, policymakers, thinkers in the field. So I think it's it's a tribute to you that you come together at the summit. And I hope that your experience makes you want to go back and really work on this for your career. Actually, I was thinking what to talk about today, and one of the things was your career paths and what you're doing. I think so. The first pitch I'm going to make to you is New York City was the right place for you to come, because I think understanding not only what New York City's done, but what role cities are going to have in climate change. I think, and I'm going to get into that, it's going to be incredibly important. And in my case, I've gone from the public sector and private sector. I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But I think what's important is you want to keep your vision high. You want to understand the global issues, but the opportunity you're going to have in understanding the city is really, I think, where the future lies when you're dealing with the realities of tight budgets or different types of infrastructure and the relation that they have with each other, the public and private sectors and how they work, and things that can be done with whether it's leveraging public and private sectors, different financing structures, always connecting with quality of life, looking at how to use big data, looking at customer engagement. There are so many areas where the old world of policymakers have only scratched the surface, and you guys are going to lead the charge. So I'd love to hear from you guys afterwards what you're working on, if you have what kind of ideas you have in the parts of the world that you're coming from. So just a little bit about New York City. So I started off in New York City as the head of energy policy for the city for Mayor Bloomberg in his final term, and the sustainability person the final 2 years. We're seeing a tremendous period of innovation right now in the energy sector around the world, not only in the technologies and business models that underlie them, and regulatory policies trying to catch up in many ways. New York City's interesting. I think it's really a marvel of engineering when you consider 8.3 million people in a very dense environment. You think about the genius of the system. We still have the longest underground tunnel in the world that serves water from further upstate, and by gravity brings it down to New York City. So you don't have to pump it. So we have that type of infrastructure. We have the oldest electric utility in the world that has one of the most reliable systems in the world. We have one of the most expansive subway systems. So we in New York City are lucky. We have a low carbon footprint. But I think one of the things you learn is crafting good energy and climate policy is a very tricky matter, because there's always competing priorities, and trying to figure out the best, most cost-effective way to do something is really where the key lies. Think about in the world, 50% of the world's population lives in cities today. By 2050, it's going to be 75%. So looking at megacities like today's megacities like Tokyo, London, New York City, I think is very important. But also the emerging cities of the world, which are going to be smaller but growing very rapidly, and the kind of issues that they face really are going to be the key in almost every part of the world that we're dealing with. In fact, more so in the developing world, since 75% I think of our urban growth is going to be in the developing world. So tell you a little bit about, so I now work for our utility in New York City at Con Ed. I'm the director of a team looking at the future business model of the utility. And tell you first a little bit about my stint in city government. So really what was amazing working for Mayor Bloomberg back 2010 when I joined his administration was, that administration really looked at, first looked at the city, how to make the city a more livable place, how to improve the quality of life of the city, realizing that demographers were telling us that we're going to have 1 million more residents by 2030, realizing that people, what they were interested in is things like being 10 minutes away from a park, having cleaner air, having cleaner water. And in addition to that, the mayor really decided, look, the federal government, we don't know when they're going to act on climate policy, but cities can do a lot. So he said, look, why don't we reduce the footprint of New York City, the carbon footprint, by 30% by 2030. And so that really set the trajectory. So it was an amazing place to work when you had that kind of dedication And if you look at over the course of 5 years, New York City reduced its carbon footprint by 19%. And it's, and a couple things for you to reflect on as you go back in your careers. I think there are a couple lessons that we learned. One is, how to use information and big data to really figure out where to target the problem. You don't want to just kind of spray a gun. You want to figure out really the most cost-effective solutions. So we realized, my predecessors, that really 75% of New York City's emissions come from buildings. That other cities like Houston and Los Angeles have more emissions from the transportation sector. In New York City, it's mostly buildings and the energy that's consumed in buildings. So we decided, we have to understand the DNA of our buildings. So the administration enacted a benchmarking regulation that basically said that we want to understand every building over 50,000 square feet, how much energy does it consume, and other aspects of it. So really, the massive amount of data that we got is more than the square footage of all of San Francisco and Boston combined. So this data is tremendously helpful in understanding where to target energy efficiency programs, how to look at consumers. Another aspect is really understanding how to leverage public and private partnerships and financing. So the mayor said, look, I want New York City to have the cleanest air of any major urban center in North America. So at that, the idea was, look, we need to convert away from fuel oil in the city, which is really polluting, has soot, and move towards natural gas and other forms of energy. And over the course of 5 years, what we found was that New York City went to one of the cleanest, has had one of the cleanest air emissions of any city in the U.S. And that was partly attributed to looking at all the different types of infrastructure. How does a pipeline system connect with the distribution system to buildings and financing? How do customers get involved? And trying to understand that whole chain was really important. Another element is understanding distributed systems and adaptive planning. It's not always the mega project that's going to get you there. It's different ways of looking at reevaluating what you're doing and doing it in a distributed manner. And for example, our water utility, rather than having spent billions of dollars for storm runoff, big cement structures that count for storm runoff, the decision was made, let's do it adaptive. Let's make the city more porous so you have more green spaces that will accumulate that water. So that saved the city potentially billions of dollars, and because you could scale it as you learn more about the system. It was something that was more visible and understandable. Then also using the best science. And this is where I'll get into climate adaptation. That's why I think looking at cities is important for you because not only do you want to figure out the most cost-effective way to reduce emissions, but you can also, I think, have a better understanding of the risks. And really, so the mayor looked at really trying to understand what would happen with the floodplain. This is really prior to Sandy, Hurricane Sandy in our case. And the analysis really showed, we have 530 miles of coastline in New York City. A lot of the critical infrastructure is on that floodplain. And so that understanding with all the infrastructure operators really helped the city understand and the operators where to spend money. Now, if you look at what happened during Sandy, it's not only Sandy, but we had 2 historic peak load days. So when electricity load reaches a peak in the summer, we're summer peaking sector, we had 2 historic load days. We had Hurricane Irene and Sandy. So it's something that if we look out to 2050, our climate scientists believe that New York City will have as many so-called 90-degree days as Birmingham, Alabama, and several feet potentially of sea level rise at the outer envelope, let's say the 90th confidence interval. And that's a significant challenge as we learn what might happen if we don't work on the climate mitigation side also. And so now I'm at the utility, and one of the reasons I decided to come was I saw, for example, what Con Edison, my employer right now, did during the hurricane, and it was heroic to see what that sector can get done in that kind of a crisis and the opportunities that lie before. So right now, so I'm the director of a team looking at how to distribute energy resources. And that's energy efficiency, distributed generation like fuel cells and solar, demand response. What role do they have in the utility sector? If we think about utilities in the old days of being more of a natural monopoly, what does it mean when you have technologies now that can be, have a better climate footprint in many cases, not in all cases, and can be part of the distribution utility. So this is the role I have right now. A couple of interesting things. So, you know, New York City has the largest underground network in the world and the largest steam network in the world. I heard somewhere, I'm not sure if this is the case, that if you took all the copper that's under the ground, it would be maybe the second or third largest copper mine in the world. Not sure if that's the case. It's extensive, massive infrastructure that works incredibly reliably. But we also have some interesting things. For example, many parts of the city, you have 6 million room air conditioners, right? Those little wall air conditioners that for the most case you can't control them in the old days. And 20% of the peak load on a summer day are these little stationary air conditioners. And so we started implementing this energy efficiency team at Con Ed, trying to make these things controllable, so that consumers could say, okay, I'm leaving the house, I can turn up and I can turn down. When the utility sends a signal, you can ratchet down during a peak load. It's incredibly important. Think about places like Hong Kong, Jakarta, New Delhi, cities that are becoming increasingly vertical, where you might have small spaces where people don't necessarily have central air. There's a tremendous amount of innovation going on right now. And one of the things that we found, which gets to you, was the people who were most interested in controlling the device were people under the age of 34. Right? I mean, so what you're going to find is, that's where we get to you, which is, the world's population is expected to increase by, what, 2.3 billion between now and 2050. You guys are the next generation, so there are things that we're seeing innovation right now in social media, crowdsourcing, new business models, new ways of engaging consumers to respond to different price signals. You're seeing companies go in with the so-called behind the meter into people's homes. And there's a new generation of investments that are going to happen where we need the brightest thinkers, people who have new ways of looking at things to address some of these big problems. Again, it's not always going to be the single mega project. It's going to be, in some cases, thousands or millions of small things as they add up that are going to really make a difference. So I'm going to wrap up. I'm probably over time, right? No. There's so much more to talk about, but I'd love to talk to you guys afterwards. I know we have one more speaker, right?
He's not here.
Should I take questions? You probably don't have questions, but so if you guys have any questions, I'd love to hear from you. What kind of ideas you have, or frustrations that you have, or interests, or things from part of the world that you're. I love to hear the new ideas because we're always trying to implement new things, and hearing from people around the world sometimes really helpful. Sometimes you don't expect a solution and it pops up out of nowhere. So anyhow, so you don't have to ask me, but I'd be happy to answer any questions. But anyhow, well, thank you for having me, and I hope to meet up with some of you guys afterwards. Thanks.